welcome to the Deep Dive, where we plunge into the depths of fascinating stories and resurface with the unexpected. Today, we're challenging those common, often romanticized historical narratives. The ones filled with glittering castles and chivalry or grand figures on pedestals. Because history, as it's often told, frequently overlooks the brutal realities, the unsung contributions, or maybe just the sheer ingenuity of individuals.
And more often than not, it overlooks the women who had to carve out their power in a world really designed against them.
Right.
That's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to try and pull back the curtain on those hidden realities. We'll be taking a hard look at what life was really like in the Middle Ages, focusing on the daily grind, but also the surprising resilience that defined it.
Okay.
Then we'll pivot to the audacious rise of an empress who didn't inherit a throne but seized it. After that, we'll travel back further in time to uncover the enduring mystery of an ancient queen whose name was lost, but whose influence was profoundly etched in stone. Finally, we'll land in the 20th century with an icon who famously transformed profound pain into revolutionary artistic power.
So for you, our listener, what's the real aha moment we're hoping you uncover by looking past those, romanticized stories?
Well, understanding these perspectives isn't just about learning new facts. It offers incredible aha moments because it gives you a richer, more nuanced view of history. It shows just how deeply personal struggles and triumphs, especially those of women, shaped the world we live in, revealing hidden truths in plain sight.
Let's truly unpack this then. When you've plunged into the sources on medieval life, what's the first jarring reality that would hit you if you woke up in, say, the year 1325? Forget Hollywood glamour. Pants is the authentic picture of a 14th century morning.
Okay, well, forget memory foam or even a proper bed. Your mattress would likely be a straw-stuffed sack, probably crawling with bugs. Hey, that was literally a barn floor a few months ago. And the smell. Just imagine a one-room wooden hut shared with your entire family, some livestock.
Livestock inside.
Often, yes, and all their accompanying insects. It's a truly fragrant symphony of stale beer, human sweat, goat, and quite possibly mold. There's no escaping it.
And the physical toll. I imagine life would age you incredibly fast.
Absolutely. You try to stretch, and every joint aches. At 22, you would already be considered, well, roughly middle-aged by medieval standards.
Wow, 22.
Yeah, your spine would creak like an old wooden door. And privacy, that's just not a concept. Your entire family, plus maybe a few stray relatives, are all waking up right beside you, alongside various parasites and rodents. You're never truly alone.
Okay, then nature calls. There are no modern conveniences, no plumbing. How do people manage basic hygiene, like the toilet situation?
Right. If you're a peasant, it's a wooden bucket, probably already full, maybe behind the house if you're lucky. The smell is, well, substantial. After doing your business, you typically empty it into the street with the shout of "Gardez-vous!" That's an old French warning. Watch out below.
Did people actually watch out?
Probably not fast enough, usually. Streets were essentially open sewers of human and animal waste. Even in a castle, you might have a garderobe, which was just a hole in the wall dropping waste straight down into the moat.
Convenient, I guess.
Convenient for disposal, yeah, but a known vulnerability if enemies were desperate enough to climb through.
Oh, right.
And as for toilet paper, you're looking at straw, leaves, rags, moss, or sometimes just nothing at all.
And what about brushing your teeth? Or, I guess, the complete lack of it?
Dental hygiene was virtually non-existent. People might chew on a twig or rinse with wine if they had it.
Right.
By your mid-20s, your teeth would likely look like something pulled from a haunted crypt riddled with cavities, gums swollen.
Whoa.
And bad breath was simply the norm. Everyone had it. Sugar, being a luxury, hastened decay for the rich, while peasants suffered slowly from gritty food wearing teeth down.
So if you got a toothache.
Your local barber-surgeon, the same person who cut your hair, would extract it, probably with an iron hook, maybe by candlelight, and definitely with zero anesthesia.
No anesthesia.
None. And an infected tooth could easily lead to sepsis and be a death sentence without antibiotics, which obviously didn't exist.
It sounds like every basic need was an ordeal. What about food? No quick breakfast cereal, I assume?
Definitely not. Breakfast, if you had it, was typically pottage. A thick, gloopy stew that simmered for days, maybe even weeks.
Weeks.
Yeah, with new ingredients constantly being dumped on top of the old. It was less a recipe and more an ongoing edible experiment. And your bread. A hunk so hard it could probably deflate arrows, made from coarse rye or barley flour, often bulked up with sawdust or ground up acorns to make it go further.
Sawdust.
Oh.
And I heard about drinking beer first thing in the morning. Why was that the drink of choice, even for children?
Because the water was teeming with parasites and filth. It was literally trying to murder you quietly.
Right.
Weak ale or beer was actually a safer bet, as the brewing process killed off most contaminants.
Makes sense.
Meat or cheese were rare luxuries, usually reserved for Sundays or special feast days, if your lord was feeling generous. And spices like pepper, forget it. They'd cost more than your monthly wages.
So you're constantly hungry, your teeth are rotting, living in a fragrant, bug-infested hut. What about your clothes?
You'd own probably exactly one outfit, a rough wool tunic or maybe a linen shift. One, worn for months, possibly years, without washing.
Never washed.
Well, how would you? Soap was rare, water was dirty, it would smell like a compost pile that's been left to marinate in a pigsty. Constant itching from fleas, lice, bed bugs, that was just part of life. Rashes were unaddressed, probably scabies half the time. And most peasants walked barefoot through mud, dung, and whatever diseases were lurking in those puddles.
And the work itself, especially for women, it seems incredibly demanding.
Oh, incredibly. If you were among the 90% of the population who were peasants, you were working the land from sunrise to sunset 6 days a week with really rudimentary tools, wooden hoes, rusty sickles.
No weekends off.
No weekends, no clocking out. You'd dig ditches, sow seeds, carry water until your spine was practically an S-curve. And for women, the burden was even heavier. They not only did the demanding field work alongside the men, but also managed all the household tasks, caring for children, cleaning, cooking, spinning wool, feeding animals, all while enduring the constant discomforts of the era. Children, by the way, started helping out around age 5, doing real work.
And the elements were just another enemy, I imagine, with no climate control whatsoever.
Absolutely. Winters meant freezing wooden huts, maybe with just cloth over window holes and very little firewood, because gathering it from the Lord's forest could often be illegal.
So you just froze.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Frostbite wasn't diagnosed, it was just bad luck. Summers turned your home into a clay oven. No fans, no deodorant, just sweltering heat, flies, mosquitoes buzzing everywhere, and heat stroke, which they often just dismissed as taking a bad turn.
It sounds like disease was just waiting around every corner, too, with primitive medicine being the only option.
Oh, absolutely. Water, whether for drinking or bathing, was genuinely hazardous. A lot of people actually believed bathing opened your pores and let disease in, so they avoided it.
Really? Avoided bathing?
Yeah. And medicine was primitive, often counterintuitive. Illness was blamed on unbalanced humors, blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile.
Right. The humus?
Got a fever, too much blood, so they'd bloodlet you with dull blades or leeches, feeling sad. Too much black bile, so you got laxatives.
Laxatives for sadness.
Yep. Surgeries were done without anesthesia, with unclean tools. Germ theory wasn't invented for centuries. Disease was attributed to bad air, miasma, or maybe God being annoyed with your moral failings. A simple toothache, like we said, could be a death sentence.
It paints a very, very bleak picture of daily survival.
Yeah.
What was the average life expectancy like?
It hovered around 30 to 40 years, maybe, but that number is heavily skewed by incredibly high infant mortality.
Oh, okay.
Nearly half of all children died before they reached the age of 5. And childbirth itself was, tragically, a leading cause of death for women.
And violence seems to have been an omnipresent fact of life, from minor crimes to, well, domestic situations.
Violence was everywhere. In the home, in the streets, on the battlefield. Steal bread, you might lose a hand. Lie, your tongue could be pierced. Gossip too much as a woman, you might meet the scold's bridle, an iron cage locked onto your head.
That's horrific.
Justice often meant trial by ordeal, like sticking your hand in boiling water or being tossed into a river. If you sank, you were innocent but drowned. If you floated, you were guilty and executed.
Sounds like a medieval game show where the prize is survival and the host is actively rooting against you.
That's not a bad way to put it, actually. Public executions were spectator events. Domestic violence was common and largely unaddressed. War was always simmering somewhere. It was gritty, cruel, relentless. Life was survival, not leisure. Yet through all of this, people still laughed, sang songs, told stories, fell in love, and found meaning. Because humans are stubborn like that. It shows us that true grit isn't just about surviving hardship, but about finding ways to define normal and joy, even when every system seems designed against your comfort. It's kind of a radical redefinition of human expectation.
It's almost overwhelming to think about. Okay, so from the unseen struggles of everyday medieval life, where survival was the main goal, let's turn our attention to a woman who not only survived, but seized ultimate power and reshaped an empire, all while defying societal expectations. We're talking about Catherine the Great.
That's right. Long before she was Catherine the Great, Empress of all Russia, she was simply Sophie. Born in 1729, she came from a pretty obscure German princely family. Her tiny duchy offered little in terms of power, but Sophie herself possessed something no title could provide: razor-sharp intelligence, relentless charm, and a quiet, burning hunger for greatness.
And her upbringing.
It was strict, marked by a cold, calculating mother who was obsessed with status. So Sophie learned early on to navigate the fine line between obedience and cunning. She read voraciously, spoke multiple languages, and learned to observe rooms before speaking skills that would become essential survival tools later on.
And she was thrust into this challenging environment at such a young age, summoned to Russia to marry Grand Duke Peter. What was that initial encounter like, and how did it set the stage for her future?
At just 14, Sophie arrives in St. Petersburg in 1744 to meet her intended, Peter. He was, well, awkward, immature, obsessed with toy soldiers, far more interested in playing board games than thinking about governing an empire.
Not exactly emperor material.
Not at all. He idolized Frederick the Great of Prussia and openly resented the Russian court. It was a stark contrast to Sophie, who, upon converting to Orthodoxy and taking the name Catherine, embraced Russia with fierce determination. She learned the language, studied its history, memorized Orthodox rituals. She wanted to belong. Peter clearly wanted to escape.
The Russian court sounds like a treacherous place. How did she navigate that viper's nest, especially with Peter being such an unsuited partner?
It was absolutely a viper's nest: gossip, paranoia, brutal power games. Empress Elizabeth's health was declining, and Catherine was under constant scrutiny. She couldn't trust her husband, her mother, even her own servants. Yet Catherine brilliantly cultivated allies in the shadows. She charmed military officers, scholars, anyone useful. She developed this reputation for dignity and restraint, a stark contrast to Peter's childish tantrums.
Smart.
Very. She also began devouring the works of Enlightenment thinkers like Voltaire and Montesquieu, starting to build a vision for Russia, a nation of strength, education, reason. She clearly understood that the Russian throne wouldn't be inherited passively, it would have to be taken.
And she didn't wait long. Peter III's reign was disastrously short, creating the perfect opening for Catherine. Can you walk us through that bloodless coup?
Right. In 1762, after nearly 2 decades of waiting, Catherine saw her moment. Peter III's reign began unraveling almost immediately. In just a few short months, he managed to alienate the church, offend the nobility, insult the army, and openly praise Prussia, Russia's traditional enemy.
Quite the list.
He reversed key policies and even talked openly about divorcing Catherine to marry his mistress. The court, the army, even ordinary Russians saw Peter as completely unfit to rule. So that July, while Peter was away, Catherine launched her coup. Supported by key military figures like the Orlov brothers, she rode through St. Petersburg, was proclaimed Empress Catherine II, and won the allegiance of the Imperial Guard.
And Peter.
Peter surrendered within days. Shortly after, he was found dead under mysterious circumstances. Officially, it was reported as a hemorrhoidal colic.
Colic?
Yes, but unofficially, it was widely believed to be murder, probably orchestrated by allies wanting to secure Catherine's position.
So she became empress not by birthright, but by sheer will and audacity. That's truly unprecedented for a foreign-born woman at that time. But how much of her initial reformist zeal was genuine Enlightenment ideals? And how much was maybe a performative act for the philosophers she corresponded with, like Voltaire?
That's a really crucial question. Catherine was undoubtedly inspired by Enlightenment ideals. She genuinely admired Voltaire and Diderot. She corresponded directly with Voltaire for over 15 years, even bought Diderot's entire library when he needed money. She seemed to truly believe in reason, progress, education, and the role of a monarch as a servant of the people, even while ruling with absolute authority, of course.
Contradiction there.
A big one. Her early reign was filled with efforts to codify Russian law. She formed the Legislative Commission in 1767, this ambitious project to rewrite the entire legal code. Her own nakaz, or instructions, spoke of equality before the law, the dangers of torture, the responsibility of rulers to serve the common good, pretty radical stuff for an 18th century empress in Russia.
But those ideals met the harsh realities of Russia, this vast, feudal, deeply conservative land. How did she manage that balancing act between being a philosopher queen in public and a practical empress in private?
Exactly. She had to perform a very delicate balancing act. While she did abolish some forms of torture and expanded access to secular education, she also crucially reaffirmed the nobility's control over their serfs.
So she needed the nobles.
She absolutely needed their loyalty to maintain her grip on power, so this shows her pragmatic side. She was willing to sacrifice some of her Enlightenment ideals for the sake of stability in a country still largely shackled by feudalism.
Beyond internal reforms, she also had massive imperial ambitions. Russia's borders stretched much wider under her rule. What were her key strategies for expansion?
She wasn't content with just internal reform. She saw expansion as Russia's destiny. She waged successful wars against the Ottoman Empire, securing vital warm water ports and control over the Black Sea coast access Russian czars had coveted for generations.
That was huge for Russia.
Huge. These victories solidified Russia's position as a major continental force. Catherine also famously participated in the partitions of Poland, carving up the struggling Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth with Austria and Prussia. By 1795, Poland was effectively erased from the map, and Russia claimed vast new lands and millions of new subjects.
Her private life was also the subject of much gossip, wasn't it? This curated parade of lovers often seemed to overshadow her political achievements in the European imagination. Was this truly just personal indulgence, or was there a strategy to it?
It was almost certainly strategic, at least in part. She had numerous lovers, yes, often younger, handsome, and politically influential men. She didn't hide them. She often rewarded them with titles and estates, or quietly dismissed them if they ceased to be useful or loyal.
So they were assets.
Often, yes. Gregory Potemkin was perhaps the most important. Their relationship blurred the lines between romance, politics, and partnership. Some historians even think they married in secret. Together, they shaped military campaigns and major colonization projects, like in Crimea.
And the gossip.
The European gossip, the satirical pamphlets painting her as lustful and unhinged, a lot of that stemmed from the fact that Catherine was a woman wielding power unapologetically.
Right, the double standard.
Exactly. In a world where female rulers were expected to be saintly virgins or tragic figures, she simply refused to play that role. She seemed to believe pleasure was natural, and her liaisons were often strategic, surrounding herself with loyal, capable, politically useful men, and demonstrating an ability to separate emotion from governance.
Despite her brilliance, her reign wasn't without peril. The Pugachev rebellion must have been a terrifying moment for her.
It really was. In 1773, a Cossack named Yemelyan Pugachev claimed to be Peter III, Catherine's dead husband. He wasn't, of course.
Of course not.
But he promised liberation from serfdom, lower taxes, land, all the things the peasants desperately wanted. This sparked the largest peasant uprising in Russian history. For a terrifying moment, it seemed the empire might actually fracture. Catherine was profoundly shaken. This wasn't a foreign war, it was a revolt from within.
How did she react?
She dispatched professional military forces to crush the rebellion ruthlessly. Pugachev was eventually defeated, captured, dragged to Moscow in a cage, and publicly beheaded as a warning. Afterward, Catherine doubled down on order and control. Any dreams she might have had of liberating the serfs faded. The rebellion had shown her the limits of Enlightenment ideals in Russia. She prioritized stability over philosophy, reinforcing the nobility's control over the serfs even more.
When we look at Catherine the Great's entire 30-plus year reign, what's the most surprising truth her story reveals about power and society?
Catherine the Great's reign wasn't just about expansion and reform. It's really a masterclass in how vision, when combined with ruthless political will and a keen understanding of inherent limitations, can reshape an entire nation, even if it means sacrificing some ideals for practical power. She didn't just reign, she ruled. With intellect, strategy, and an unapologetic grip on history, she left Russia wealthier, larger, more formidable. She modernized education, founded schools for girls, even publicly received the smallpox vaccine herself to promote inoculation. Very forward-thinking.
So the Great title.
The title The Great really came from her ability to take and wield power effectively on her own terms, redefining what it meant for a woman to deserve a crown in that era.
From an empress who reshaped an empire, we now travel way back to an ancient civilization to uncover the silent but powerful legacy of a queen whose name was lost, but whose influence remains etched in stone and red dust.
Okay, so deep in the humid Chiapas jungle in southern Mexico lie the ruins of Palenque, whispering stories from the ancient Maya world. In 1994, a team of Mexican archaeologists were surveying Temple the 13th, a sort of modest pyramid right next to the famous Temple of the Inscriptions, where the great king Pakal is buried. They discovered something extraordinary. A sealed, hidden chamber deep beneath the structure, pristine, untouched by looters for over 1,000 years.
Wow. And when they opened the stone sarcophagus resting within, what did they find that gave her the haunting name, the Red Queen?
As they lifted the heavy lid, this brilliant, shocking red dust rose up like smoke. The entire interior was coated in powdered cinnabar, that's a toxic mercury sulfide the Maya used ceremonially.
Cinnabar. Red. Okay.
Lying within that crimson cloud was the skeleton of a woman, buried with immense care and reverence. Her bones were fragile but intact. Her skull still wore an intricate jade mask, and her body was surrounded by incredible funerary offerings. Necklaces, diadems, ear schools, all crafted from jade and shell. Everything about the burial just screamed royalty.
But no name.
No name inscribed, no glyphs identified her. It was one of the richest female burials ever found in Mesoamerica and a total enigma. So researchers simply started calling her the Red Queen, and the name stuck. She lived sometime around the 7th century during Palenque's golden age.
So this cinnabar was more than just a pigment. What was its sacred significance to the Maya, and what did it tell us about her status?
To the Maya, cinnabar was one of the most sacred and dangerous substances. Its vibrant red symbolized blood, rebirth, the life force connecting human and divine realms. Covering the dead in cinnabar wasn't just decoration. It was a profound ritual meant to transform the body, preserving it not physically for eternity, but for transition into the divine. The Red Queen was literally being prepared for deification.
And the toxicity mattered.
The toxicity itself likely underscored her extraordinary status. Handling it was dangerous. And interestingly, in all of Palenque, only 2 burials had such intense cinnabar coverage. The Red Queen and Pakal the Great, the mighty king buried next door.
The plot thickens.
Exactly. That detail alone immediately sparked speculation. Was she his wife, his mother, or someone of equal, perhaps divine status?
Beyond the cinnabar, what other clues did the offerings in her tomb provide about her identity and power?
Well, her skull was placed on a layer of jaguar skin, another very sacred symbol. Around her were things like bow needles, obsidian blades, miniature jade figurines hinting at elaborate rituals performed either during her life or maybe in her honor after death. The rich offerings, particularly the jade jewelry, weren't just ornaments. Jade was incredibly sacred to the Maya, symbolizing eternal life, the vitality of the jungle, the breath of the gods.
So only the elite had it.
Only the highest elite were buried with it. She had jade covering her chest, wrists, ears, a clear sign she wielded immense influence, perhaps even divine favor. And her jade funerary mask, delicately placed over her face, was constructed from dozens of tiny mosaic tiles. This mask served a ritual function to protect the soul, preserve identity, and present her as divine to the gods as she embarked on the dangerous journey through Xibalba, their mythical underworld.
So these weren't luxuries.
They were necessities for the soul's journey in their belief system.
For all this grandeur, the most intriguing absence is her name. Why no inscription? And what's the most compelling theory about who she actually was?
It is haunting, that lack of a name. For all the grandeur, just silence on identity. The leading theory is that she was Takbu Aja, the wife of Kinish Jana Ap Pakal Pakal, the Great Palenque's most famous ruler.
Okay, his wife. What supports that?
Several things. The tomb's location, just a few feet away from Pakal's own grand burial, suggests a deliberate pairing husband and wife, maybe rulers even in death. The shared intense cinnabar burial is also a strong indicator. DNA tests were tried, but they were inconclusive regarding a direct maternal link to Pakal's descendants, but that doesn't rule out a spousal relationship at all.
Right.
Other theories exist. Maybe she was Pakal's powerful mother, Sakkuk, who ruled as regent or perhaps a high priestess. But the evidence, like location and burial style, points most strongly to Tsakbu Aja, a queen consort and mother of kings, and maybe a spiritual counterpart to Pakal.
And the lack of a name. Any ideas why?
It might have been intentional. In Maya cosmology, the soul lived on not just through inscribed names on monuments, but through ritual, symbol, the connection to sacred space, the whispers of the earth itself. Her identity was perhaps encoded differently.
This suggests a much more significant role for royal women in Maya civilization than we might typically imagine. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Absolutely. Royal women in Maya civilization were definitely not just passive consorts. They were often diplomats, priestesses, and vital power brokers. Their bloodlines were political capital, used to forge alliances and secure claims to the throne.
Like Pakal's mother.
Exactly. Take Sakkuk, Pakal's mother. When the throne of Palenque was vacant, she ruled as queen regent until her son came of age, a ruler in her own right. Across the Maya world, inscriptions show women performing major ceremonies, engaging in warfare diplomacy, sometimes ruling outright. They're often portrayed as equals or occasionally even depicted as superior to kings in certain contexts. The archaeology tells a completely different story than later colonial views, one of complex gender roles where power was negotiated and fiercely held.
And the architecture of Temple the 13th itself, her final resting place, also speaks volumes about her status, doesn't it?
It really does. Temple XIII wasn't merely a grave, it was conceived as a gateway to eternity. Its sacred positioning near Pakal's tomb, its east-west alignment mirroring the sun's journey, these were intentional cosmological statements. The chamber itself is stark, sealed tightly, no glyphs, no murals inside. This silence feels intentional, a space maybe not for the living to interpret easily, but for the dead queen to transform.
Interesting contrast.
Yeah. If Pakal represented the sun's journey, perhaps the Red Queen represented the moon, embodying a kind of cosmic duality. Masculine and feminine, king and queen, sun and moon. Her burial, nameless, spoke through ritual and symbol.
So when we piece together the mystery of the Red Queen, what's the most surprising truth this story reveals about human history and power?
The Red Queen's legacy isn't just about her individual power. It's a profound testament to how ancient cultures could encode status and divinity through ritual, symbol, and sacred space, making even a nameless burial speak volumes about a queen's enduring influence. She sort of ensured her legacy as a woman who ruled, in silence, her power known without meeting a name carved in stone.
From an ancient queen whose power was known but her name lost to time, we fast forward now to a modern icon who fiercely carved her own identity, turning personal suffering into a revolutionary artistic legacy. Frida Kahlo.
Frida Kahlo, born July 6, 1907 in Coyoacán, Mexico City, at the Casa Azul, the Blue House. Her childhood home filled with color, contradiction, and this quiet strength. She was the third of 4 daughters. She seemed to inherit her father's artistic eye and introspection and her mother's fierce resilience. Even as a child, Frida was imaginative, outspoken, boldly defiant.
And her childhood was marked by a significant physical challenge quite early on, wasn't it?
Yes. At age 6, she contracted polio. It left her right leg thinner and weaker than her left. This physical difference isolated her somewhat, but it also seemed to bring her closer to her father, who encouraged her mental sharpness and artistic leanings. Unlike most girls of her time, Frida didn't aspire just to be a wife. Her goal was to be a doctor. She enrolled in the prestigious National Preparatory School at 15, one of only a handful of girls accepted then, where she stood out for her intellect and her rebellious spirit.
Her life, however, took a dramatic, defining turn when she was 18. What happened?
On September 17, 1925, Frida Kahlo's life essentially split in two. She was just 18 when the bus she was riding on collided violently with a streetcar. The crash was horrific. Frida was impaled by an iron handrail that entered her left hip and exited through her pelvis. Her spinal column fractured in 3 places, her right leg shattered, foot dislocated, collarbone and ribs broken, shoulder dislocated, abdomen pierced. Just devastating injuries.
Unimaginable.
And in this bizarre, almost surreal detail, a pouch of glittering gold powder she happened to be carrying for an art project apparently exploded on impact, dusting her broken, bleeding form in shimmering ash.
That sounds absolutely devastating. How did she find her way to art amidst such profound physical and emotional trauma?
She underwent numerous surgeries, spent weeks, months in a full-body cast, immobile, writhing with pain and infection. The future she'd imagined as a doctor just slipped away. But in that forced stillness, something profound stirred. Her father gave her brushes. Her mother rigged a special easel above her bed, and a mirror was placed on the canopy so she could see herself. Lying there in plaster and agony, Frida began to paint her own reflection. First, she said, out of boredom, then it became an obsession. It was truly an act of survival.
She famously said, "I paint myself because I'm so often alone and because I am the subject I know best." How did her self-portraits become such a radical form of expression, especially compared to the art of her time?
Frida didn't paint pretty flowers or idealized portraits. She painted her raw, unfiltered pain and reality. Her early works were small, often painted on tin or wood panels, inspired by Mexican retablos, those traditional devotional paintings depicting suffering and miracles.
Right, I know those.
Frida turned this tradition inward. Her body became the canvas, her emotions the altar. She painted herself as split, as pierced, as bleeding. In one painting, she's impaled by nails like a modern-day martyr. In another, she floats in a barren landscape, tethered to a broken column, a metaphor for her shattered spine. She painted herself weeping, fractured, sometimes even decapitated symbolically, but never passive. Her gaze is always direct, watching. Her pain was never sanitized. She painted the ugliness of trauma with beauty, defiance, sometimes even dark humor.
It was a whole new visual language.
Exactly. She invented this new kind of visual narrative, blending Mexican folk art, surrealism, medical illustration, personal symbolism. Her paintings became like dreamlike autopsies of her soul, framed in vibrant color, culture, and myth. By the time she recovered enough to walk again, albeit always painfully, Frida was an artist, and her art was unlike anything anyone had really seen. She had taken the worst thing that had ever happened to her and turned it into this incredible source of creation.
Her relationship with Diego Rivera was equally dramatic and defining for her. How did that tumultuous marriage influence her art and her life?
Oh, hugely. In 1928, still recovering and just 21, Frida met Diego Rivera. He was 20 years her senior and already Mexico's most famous painter. She apparently brought her paintings to him, asking bluntly, "Do I have talent?" Diego recognized her unique, unfiltered voice, immediately raw, unpretentious, full of rage, irony, pain, beauty. Their relationship was as consuming as it was creative. Frida once famously said, "I suffered two grave accidents in my life, one in which a streetcar knocked me down, the other was Diego."
Wow, quite the statement.
Tells you a lot, doesn't it? They married in 1929. Her parents called it a marriage between an elephant and a dove because of their physical contrast. Their bond was passionate but incredibly chaotic. Diego supported her art, championed it even, but was endlessly unfaithful, including, devastatingly, with Frida's own sister, Christina.
Oh no.
Yeah. In return, Frida took lovers of her own, both men and women, including rumored affairs with the exiled Leon Trotsky and the artist Georgia O'Keeffe. They divorced in 1939, but then remarried just a year later, supposedly with new terms. Frida would maintain her autonomy, her home, her money, her name. Despite all the betrayals, Diego remained this constant force, unwavering in his belief in her as a truly great artist and a revolutionary spirit.
She also spent time in the U.S. with Diego, and that seems to have further solidified her unique identity and political views.
Yes, in the early 1930s, Frida followed Diego to San Francisco, Detroit, and New York for his mural commissions. These years abroad brought her face to face with American industrialism and materialism during the Great Depression, leaving her with deep political discomfort. She was a proud Mexican nationalist and a committed communist, and she openly mocked what she saw as American superficiality, longing for the grit, color, and contradiction of Mexico.
How did this show up in her work?
While Diego painted these enormous public murals, Frida painted smaller, quieter, but intensely personal revolutions on tin and canvas. Her self-portraits from this time often show her bleeding, fragmented, exposed, yet her face is always calm, direct, unapologetic. Her powerful work, Henry Ford Hospital, from 1932, shows her lying naked and bleeding on a hospital bed after a miscarriage, surrounded by floating symbols of her loss, a fetus, a snail, a broken pelvis. It's a canvas that just bleeds with truth.
So powerful.
Back in Mexico, she immersed herself in leftist politics, even hosting Leon Trotsky for a time at the Casa Azul. She famously wore traditional Tijuana dresses, not just as fashion, but as a political and cultural statement, asserting her Mexicanidad. Her art, identity, body, and ideology were always deeply intertwined. She painted not just pain, but resistance.
Her physical decline continued throughout her later years, yet she remained fiercely defiant. How did this manifest in her art and activism?
As the 1940s wore on, Frida's body continued to betray her. She underwent more than 30 surgeries over her lifetime, often bedridden for months in painful body casts or corsets. Yet somehow she continued to paint. Her works perhaps grew darker, but also more defiant, painted with a clarity sharpened by pain. In The Broken Column from 1944, she presents herself split down the middle, her body pierced with nails, a cracked ionic column replacing her spine, held together by a corset. Yet her face is stoic, tears running down, but her gaze is unflinching.
Still looking right at you.
Always. Her political voice also grew louder. She rejoined the Mexican Communist Party, marched in demonstrations when she could. When her health prevented her from walking, she appeared at protests in a wheelchair, defiantly holding signs, maybe with a clenched fist raised in the air.
And her first solo exhibition in Mexico in 1953 sounds like a testament to that defiant spirit.
Oh, it was truly iconic. The doctors told her she was too ill to attend, absolutely couldn't go, so what did she do? She arranged to arrive by ambulance, was carried in on a stretcher, and placed in the center of the gallery on her own four-poster bed, which had been moved there for the occasion.
Incredible.
Dressed in traditional finery, surrounded by her art, she greeted guests from her bed with tequila, laughter, and that incredible fire still burning in her eyes. It was pure Frida. Her final paintings were both childlike and harrowing, like Marxism Will Give Health to the Sick, where she painted herself shedding crutches held by the hands of Marx. Her very last known work was a still life of sliced watermelons, vibrant and full of life, with one piece bearing the words, Viva la vida, long live life. Even facing death, she remained defiant. Her last diary entry read, "I hope the exit is joyful and I hope never to return."
Frida Kahlo died in 1954, but her legacy has only grown exponentially since then. What's the most surprising truth her story reveals about turning personal suffering into a universal message?
Frida Kahlo didn't just paint her pain, she dared to paint her unfiltered truth, a messy, vibrant, contradictory realness. And that realness became a kind of universal blueprint for self-acceptance and defiance, long before society was maybe ready to fully embrace it. She refused to disappear. As feminist scholars and activists began reclaiming forgotten voices through the 1970s and 80s, Frida's voice became louder and louder. She wasn't just seen as a painter, she became a symbol of pain turned into beauty, of feminism born through resistance, of Mexican identity celebrated without apology, of queerness, of disability, of revolution, of authenticity.
Her image is everywhere now.
Everywhere. Her face, that unibrow, the direct gaze, the flowers in her hair, it's globally iconic. Her home, the Casa Azul, is a museum, a pilgrimage site. Her diary is treated like a sacred text. Her paintings hang in the world's greatest museums. She didn't try to be flawless or fit into neat boxes. She embraced what made her different, her disability, her bisexuality, her politics, her culture, and turned it into art that transcended borders and decades.
She's become this global symbol.
A global symbol of defiance, feminism, cultural pride, creative resistance. She's a fearless bisexual icon who lived openly and unapologetically. For women, she's a reminder that power doesn't require permission. For disabled artists, she's proof that pain can fuel the brush. For Mexico, she's a treasured daughter reclaimed. She simply told the truth about herself as honestly as she could. And in doing so, she somehow told the truth for millions of others who had never seen themselves reflected so starkly, so beautifully in art before.
Today, we've woven through vastly different eras and cultures, exploring the lives of women who, despite their unique circumstances, navigated a world often designed against them. From the harsh realities and quiet endurance of a medieval peasant who somehow redefined joy in an unforgiving world.
To the audacious political and personal power of Catherine the Great, who masterfully combined vision with ruthless pragmatism to reshape an empire.
To the ancient and spiritual influence of the nameless Red Queen of Palenque, whose intentional silence spoke volumes about sacred status and enduring legacy.
And finally, to the defiant self-expression of 20th century icon Frida Kahlo, who dared to paint her unfiltered truth, turning personal pain into a universal blueprint for self-acceptance and defiance.
Each of these women, in their own way, revealed not only the brutal truths often hidden in history, but also the incredible human capacity for resilience, for claiming agency, for shaping the narrative, and for finding power where it seemed impossible.
They remind us that history is far richer and much more complex than the simplified stories we often inherit. It's filled with these unsung voices and multifaceted truths that often lie just beneath the surface of the popular narratives.
So maybe the question for you, listening, is, what narratives might you be overlooking in your own understanding of history, and what hidden power might you find if you look a little deeper? Something to mull over as you continue your own deep dive.